Welcome to another adventure with Getting Lost. Okay. I think we are definitely lost today. We are along Upper Serangoon Road. Yep, Upper Serangoon Road, right next to the Kovan MRT station. And why are we here? I am not sure. But we are heading to a residential neighbourhood to look for. I'm also not sure what it is. Where is this place? Oh, there's a shop. There's a row of shop houses here. Maybe we're coming here. Maybe, but I don't seem to be on the right side of the road. Okay, I think we are lost. Definitely lost this time.
So, what am I doing in a high-end neighborhood with condominiums, semi bungalows, terrace houses all around me? Isn't it a very interesting question? I'm looking for something. That something that I'm looking for is a place. You see, in Singapore, because of land scarcity and planning, a lot of places has been demolished. Old places like cemeteries, where they would exhume the bodies. After they exhume the bodies, then they will clear the land and use it for other purposes, like residential or retail or those kind of things. So what happened is, this place, which is a Japanese cemetery, was supposed to be cleared up, the bodies exhumed, and the place made use for other things, other purpose. But somehow they were able to convince the Singapore government that this place is not a cemetery. What this place is a park. And as a park, you should preserve it. And somehow they convinced the Singapore government to preserve it as a park. Yeah, so we're going there now to look for the Japanese cemetery park, which is somewhere in a high-end neighborhood, filled with expensive houses, terrace houses, bungalows, semi-Ds, but a cemetery right in the middle of it. Not your usual park.
Okay. So I think I may have found it. Look at this. There's a plaque here. Oh, it's just around the corner.
Looks like I found it. The biggest Japanese cemetery outside of Japan in Southeast Asia. It's just right beside me, behind these hedges here.
And I see the gates, the entry to the Japanese cemetery, right in the middle of a high-end neighborhood in Hougang. It's around 29,359 square meters area, consisting around 910 tombs, and it contains the remains of members of the Japanese community in Singapore. And when you go in here, it's like we are traveling through space across Asia from Singapore to Japan, because this place here don't look like any place in Singapore. With just a few steps, we have traveled to Japan, even though it's still tropical weather. And you have lots of very interesting tombs around here. So what we have here are, like here you can see Japanese statues, and a very well maintained cemetery, because most cemeteries are left unattended and so prone to be run down. But here is very well maintained. It's actually maintained by a groundskeeper here and funded by the Japanese Association in Singapore. And there's definitely lots and lots of very old tombs here. A extremely peaceful, tranquil, and beautiful place. Not what you expect from a cemetery.
As you can see behind me, these tombstones are much bigger than some of the other tombstones. So normally, the size of a tombstone is an indication of your wealth or your rank in the society. So people who are not well off, who are on the lower rank of society, have very basic, very simple tombstones. Whereas people who are more well off, they'll have bigger tombstones and more ornate, like this one here, with the Doric columns and the gate, metal gate. So this prominent person, this guy would probably be a prominent person in Singapore during those times.
And there are also tombs of many prominent people who used to live in Singapore. Like this one here of the first Japanese doctor in Singapore. He died in 1923. He actually opened a clinic in Singapore due to the strong appeal by the Japanese living here. And he was practicing doctor here for over 30 years.
So behind me now are the arches, or the bougainvillea arches that are very popular for Instagrammers. They come here to take photos when there are more flowers now, of course not now. Yeah, but so popular Instagram place.
Yes. Somehow it's not the flowering season for the bougainvilleas, so there's not many bougainvilleas here, but I think it was in the middle of 2019. Suddenly Instagram was filled with a lot of pictures of people coming here filming these arches. And we're heading to the end of this walkway where there is a interesting, how do I say this, historical memorial. It's a Japanese war memorial. After World War II, before the Japanese prisoners of war were sent back to Japan, and in 1947 they actually built these Japanese war memorials, and they were built by the Japanese soldiers that were used as manual laborers by the British, and some of these laborers were stationed at this cemetery, and so they secretly actually built these memorials. These memorials were dedicated to the Japanese military casualties, soldiers who committed suicide after the Japanese surrender, and those executed as war criminals. It is said that these war memorials were built and remained undisturbed by the British authorities because the British couldn't read Japanese inscription on the tombstones. So, and they were also busy rebuilding the city after the war. So, behind the memorial, the ashes of 10,000 Japanese war dead were collected, mainly from the destroyed Shonan Churito shrine that is now at the Bukit Batok Memorial, and they were put in a hole and sealed with concrete behind these memorials. And in this corner of the park, it is said that there is actually a few old rubber trees, a remembrance of what this place used to be before it was a cemetery. So the current Mido, or a hall for prayers, is actually the third structure built here. The first structure was built in 1911 by Baiso Osho, whose grave is actually in the cemetery. However, it became infested with termites and was destroyed and desolated after the war due to the absence of the Japanese Association. So in the 1960s, the Consulate General of Japan in Singapore and the Japanese Association built a second Saiyuji temple. Then in 1985, this temple was rebuilt from donations from the Japanese Association, and it was determined that this Japanese cemetery should not belong to any particular religion, and so the hall was intentionally called Mido instead of Terra, which is the Japanese term for temple. One of the more notable residents of this cemetery is of this person named Yamamoto Otokichi. He was born in Onoura village in the Chita district of Owari in 1818, and in 1832 he became a sailor and boarded a ship. Unfortunately, the ship shipwrecked along the west coast of America, and he traveled around the world, but due to the isolation policy of Japan, he was denied entry back into his home country. So from there onwards, he became a trader and finally settled in Singapore in 1862. He actually left a very interesting life. Besides being a trader, he was also a British citizen and the first Japanese resident in Singapore. He even changed his name to John Matthew Ottoson and married a Eurasian lady and converted to also Christianity. He died of tuberculosis in 1867 at the age of 49. He was first buried at the Bukit Timah Christian Cemetery. Then in 2004, with the help of the Singapore Land Authority and the National Environment Agency, they located the remains of Mr. Otokichi, which was at the Choa Chu Kang Government Cemetery. Then they actually exhumed his body and later cremated it, and the ashes were stored at this cemetery at a columbarium. Then on the 17th of February 2005, a delegation from the Mihama town visited Singapore and brought back a portion of his ashes, and he was finally able to return home to his home country after 173 years. So I'm caught in the rain. We will just have to continue our journey at this park, I guess, after that. So that will be in the next video. Join me for that. As per usual, you know what to do. Like, share and subscribe. I got Patreon, I also got PayPal. Support me on those, or just watch some old videos. And lastly, but the most important thing, don't forget to join me for my next adventure, which will be at this place. We will continue our journey and look at some more tombs. Until then, don't forget, bye bye.